Welcome back. My name is Nick, and I have Kyle here with me. Peckles with a zero on Instagram. He's a super talented artist. He's really into sci-fi. Go check him out. Today we're talking about the Holtzman Effect in Dune, and in the Dune series, we've been reviewing Dune, talking about spice to the different fractions to the Bene Gesserits to the Spacing Guild. You name it, we've been covering it here, and we have a lot more to cover until the second Dune movie drops. And just so you know, every comment and every video is entered to win a shirt from the bestnerdyshirts.com. Every month we pick one person and they win a shirt and we give it to you and you wear it and you look cool. This is our Dune shirt that Kyle designed. It's super cool, in my opinion. Let us know down below if you like the Dune shirt. But Kyle, take us away on this journey.
All right, so guys, I know now for your hardcore Dune fans listening in, you're going to be aware of the Holtzman Effect, right? But for you, perhaps you newcomers, the Holtzman Effect is one of the primary, sort of sci-fi scientific principles that sort of populate this world that explain a lot of the technology that we see in Dune, right? So the Holtzman Effect is a series of 4 interrelated principles and forces, right? So the way, so they were named after Ibrahim von Holtzman, who discovered them. So it's a scientific theory relating to the repellent force of subatomic particles. And it's a part of a branch of scientific discoveries in the area of physics, right? So these now here's some examples of their effects, right? Sort of like a breakdown of what those effects are within those 4 interrelated principles. So each effect is named for the number of dimensions it has, right? So it goes from 0 point all the way up to 3-dimensional, and we'll go from there. So there is called the point source or the 0 dimension, right? So the concept of point source nodes, this is where a lot of the Holtzman effect collapse into once they're done, once their electric charge has been cut out. So they don't occupy any physical space, but they do occupy definite locations. Right. So if that kind of bends your brain, that's because they don't occupy like our actual 3-dimensional, like our 3D dimension. Right. They're like in subspace somewhere. And it was and these nodes were discovered before Holtzman, but he further defined it. So he and also brought it in under his defining principles of the Holtzman effect. So they're an inert source or like point for each of the dimensional effects. So the next one being Holtzman waves. These are a 1-dimensional element, right? So the only known method, and Holtzman waves are the only known method for interstellar communication. Or communicating with a ship while in transit, right? So I'm guessing this is some form of FTL communication, faster than light communication, right? And it's pretty cool. It's how people can communicate with each other across the universe, right? Without succumbing to relativity.
Much needed, especially at the speed they're able to travel now, due to the spice.
Yes. So. And then the second effect is called the planar effect. You can start to see where we're going with this. That's the 2-dimensional one, right? So it's used primarily in defensive shielding, right? So where you have the we'll get into that later, but basically normal guns can't work on shields because they're traveling too fast. Only a slow knife can penetrate the shield, right? That's the planar effect at work.
And you're talking about the shields that like they turn on their belts, right?
Yes, this is the personal shields and also ship shields as well. Right? And then the final one is called the suspension nullification effect, which is the 3-dimensional one. And it was actually the first manifestation of the Holtzman effect to be discovered millennia before Holtzman understood and defined its principle. So like millennia before, they're like, oh, this is an interesting subatomic function that's going on right here. We don't necessarily understand it, but we realize it's going on, right? And Holtzman later rediscovered that and applied it to his grander theory, right? So each effect will collapse, as I sort of mentioned before. Each effect will collapse to its point source status when its power supply is stopped, right? So these discoveries can be seen in like various technologies in the books and the movies, right? So So like kind of including some of those, the technologies would include shields. So it uses the planar effect to allow the creation of shielding that like repels most methods of fast moving projectiles, but allows slower moving objects such as like hand-to-hand knives and swords and stuff to pass through. So it's kind of like if you've ever heard of an oobleck,
No.
if you know what that is, it's basically a form of non-Newtonian fluid. So you might have made it in like elementary school or junior high, but it's that sort of like goop you make that if you hit it real fast, it will stop the object really fast. But if you let it slowly go in, it will be absorbed by the fluid, right? That's an oobleck, right? So this changed the nature of warfare, right? So basically, if you have shields that can repel anything that's fast moving, right, then it's going to change conventional projectile weapons to become pretty much useless. Laser weapons become incredibly more dangerous, and basically it forced humanity to return to the use of hand weapons primarily, right? That's why in the movies we see them unsheathing a lot of swords or knives and stuff like that, right?
Which makes it more epic for storytelling too, I think.
Right. And the reason why lasers get through is because they're not a kinetic force of energy, they're a heat source of energy, right? So it's a bit different rather than a projectile.
Are the guns in Dune lasers?
Yes. So they have what are called laser guns. Or las guns, depending on how you pronounce them, right? We also noticed it. We also saw in the movie the ships have a solid beam laser that come down, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other some other technologies are suspensors, right? So the effects repellent effect allow physical objects equipped with a Holtzman field generator to defy gravity, kind of like that human hot air balloon we all know and love, Vladdy Harkonnen. So
Every time
you see
think of it, I think of the '80s version. I'm getting not even the new version.
Yeah, of course. Don't we all who have seen it? And then the other one, I would say this is probably the most practical use of the effect, is glow globes, right? So they generate self-produced light that are usually powered by organic batteries. And float by a small Holtzman field suspensor generator, right? So we've kind of seen those were following Paul around in the movies and stuff. And glow globes are referred to a lot in the books as well, like, offhand, And then one of the bigger ones, though, is space travel, right? So the most profound effect of the Holtzman effect is its ability to fold space-time and thus allow for like instantaneous travel from one side of the universe to the other, right?
But you need dust to navigate it.
Well, yes.
No, sorry, spice.
You need
dust.
spice to navigate
I'm sorry.
it.
I'm still on His Dark Materials in the back of my head.
That's a hard horse to stop riding on. I know. But yes, you do need the spice in order to navigate that because it requires a lot of calculations and foresight. Yeah, you don't want to crash your ship into a sun mid-transit.
That would not be good.
Yeah. And so now we're going to get into the history, which, in my opinion, is the most interesting, and we might get into more. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll go into the history of how these principles came to be. So the suspensor nullification effect was discovered, as I mentioned, was discovered a bit earlier. So it was discovered in 13,004 before Guild, or BG, right? By scientists in the First Empire by Verifax Mark II. Right. So it was a jealously guarded imperial secret of House Ceres, which was a power broker at the time. So it was eventually leaked, and House Ceres and their allies began the most significant program of space exploration in the history of the First Empire. Right. So this, however, was a huge expansion, and it had a big problem. Basically, they couldn't maintain communications across the vast distances of space because this was before the discovery of Holtzman waves, right? So they didn't have FTL communications. So, if you are 100 light years away, it's going to take 100 years if you're using,
normal
something traveling at light speed. Yeah. So this contributed largely to the collapse of the First Empire a few thousand years later in the year 11,105 BG, right? And then, you'll notice we're flashing forward in huge leaps and bounds here, right? Because this stuff was slowly discovered over time. Then in 7,562 BG, this is when Holtzman was alive, right? he discovered the Holtzman wave, right? So 8 years later, he passed on information necessary for its use to 6 planetary systems, but his research was interrupted when he entered cometary orbit. Cometary orbit. Okay. All right. Oh boy. This is a lot of preamble. He entered cometary orbit. Pay attention to that. That's going to be important later.
Noted.
Okay. So then, in 5694 BG, Holtzman discovered the existence of the point source node. Notice how he's living thousands of years. Interesting. But let's continue. In 3832 BG, he published the theory of the planar effect, which led to the development of the defensive shield. So during that century, when the defensive shield was attained, like the peak of its it was at the peak of its popularity. And when the so there was another event called the superconductor plague, which we might cover later, right? Brought the machine death and the little dark ages, right? So shields became more precious than ever because they were really highly coveted technology, right? Because no one could really replicate them easily. And so then in 1970 BG, Holtzman transmitted his unified effect theory that linked the various interrelated phenomena together under the umbrella term of the Holtzman effects, right? So you may have noticed the huge swaths of time here.
Yeah.
Okay. So this touches on another huge element in the Holtzman story. This might be another impetus for a character deep dive because his story is very interesting. But basically, the Cliff Notes version is he uploaded his consciousness to a ship so he could continue his work for millennia. So his ship would return on these huge elliptical orbits around the planet of Lysco 2, only returning every couple millennia or so, where he would transmit his discoveries to humanity.
Oh, wow.
I'm skipping a lot.
He's like a god.
There. I'm skipping a lot there, but basically, eventually they found out during the Butlerian Jihad and killed him because he was technically a machine. So, there's that. But his discoveries really helped advance humanity within that scope of time.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Holtzman. Thank you, Ibrahim.
Yeah,
Holtzman.
but he's almost like a god sending messages down from the heavens on what to
yes,
do.
here is this knowledge. Yeah.
Here are the 10 commandments kind of thing.
Yeah. But that is it for the Holtzman effect.
It's because you need to know this because this is groundworks for this universe. This is the base of what all the technology we're seeing basically is based off of.
Yep. When you do world building, you have, you have like these little islands of like meaning and lore that kind of connect different things together. And these are referenced a lot in the books, and you see them visually a lot, and also mentioned a little bit in the movie.
And we see them in our comments too.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is
because
really
there's a lot of Dune fans out there, and they know a thing or two.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for doing this. By the way, guys, check him out on Instagram. Pecos with a 0 on Instagram. He's a super talented artist. He kind of has his own side project with a sci-fi thing going on there. Go there to check it out and get all the updates on his sci-fi project. He also helps designs all of our shirts at thebestnerdyshirts.com. And just so you know, every comment in every video is entered to win a shirt at the end of the month. I'm figuring out a way to do a raffle thing where you just upload I've been taking screenshots of everyone's comments and it does a random shuffle. Working on it. I will perfect it for sure, but we'll see you on the next AsArt.
Yeah. You'll never get that shuffle fixed.
Yes, I will, because I have planar technology.
Whoa, what?